Hey everyone, I'm Raquel, and you're listening to the Avenue podcast. In this series, we're exploring the many layers of relationships through the story of Joseph. We hope his story inspires you to grow in the way you relate with all the people that God has put in your life.
Hi, Raquel.
Hi, Ephraim.
How you going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm really good as well. I reckon we'll get straight into it because it's a pretty long story and a pretty wacky one too.
Yes, very interesting.
For sure. Did you want to read it for us?
Sure.
Yeah?
All right, we're reading from Genesis 38 in the NLT version. About this time, Judah left home and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hira. There he saw a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua, and he married her. When he slept with her, she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and he named the boy Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son, and she named him Onan. And when she gave birth to a third son, she named him Shelah. At the time of Shelah's birth, they were living at Kezib. In the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn son to marry a young woman named Tamar. But was a wicked man in the Lord's sight, so the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to brother Onan, "Go and marry Tamar, as our law requires of the brother of a man who has died. You must produce an heir for your brother." But Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his own heir. So when he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled the semen on the ground. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. But the Lord considered it evil for Onan to deny a child to his dead brother, so the Lord took Onan's life too. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Go back to your parents' home and remain a widow until my son Shelah is old enough to marry you." But Judah didn't really intend to do this because he was afraid Shelah would also die like his two brothers. So Tamar went back to live in her father's home. Some years later, Judah's wife died. After the time of mourning was over, Judah and his friend Hira the Adullamite went up to Timnah to supervise the shearing of his sheep. Someone told Tamar, "Look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." Tamar was aware that Shelah had grown up, but no arrangements had been made for her to come and marry him. So she changed out of her widow's clothing and covered herself with a veil to disguise herself. Then she sat beside the road at the entrance to the village of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. Judah noticed her and thought she was a prostitute, since she had covered her face. So he stopped and propositioned her. "Let me have sex with you," he said, not realizing that she was his own daughter-in-law. "How much will you pay to have sex with me?" Tamar asks. "I'll send a young goat from my flock," Judah promised. "But what will you give me to guarantee that you will send the goat?" she asked. "What kind of guarantee do you want?" he replied. She answered, "Leave me your identification seal and its cord and the walking stick you're carrying." So Judah gave them to her. Then he had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. Afterward, she went back home, took off her veil, and put on her widow's clothing as usual. Later, Judah asked his friend Hira the Adullamite to take the young goat to the woman and to pick up the things he had given her as his guarantee. But Hira couldn't find her. So he asked the man who lived there, "Where can I find the shrine prostitute who was sitting beside the road at the entrance to Enaim?" "We've never had a shrine prostitute here," they replied. So Hira returned to Judah and told him, "I couldn't find her anywhere, and the men of the village claim they've never had a shrine prostitute there." "Then let her keep the things I gave her," Judah said. "I sent the young goat as we agreed, but you couldn't find her. We'd be the laughing stock of the village if we went back again to look for her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has acted like a prostitute, and now, because of this, she's pregnant." "Bring her out and let her be burned," Judah demanded. But as they were taking her out to kill her, she sent this message to her father-in-law. "The man who owns these things made me pregnant. Look closely. Whose seal and cord and walking stick are these?" Judah recognized them immediately and said, "She is more righteous than I am, because I didn't arrange for her to marry my son Shelah." And Judah never slept with Tamar again. When the time came for Tamar to give birth, it was discovered that she was carrying twins. While she was in labor, one of the babies reached out his hand. The midwife grabbed it and tied a scarlet string around the child's wrist, announcing, "This one came out first." But then he pulled back his hand, and out came his brother. "What?" the midwife exclaimed. "How did you break out first?" So he was named Perez. Then the baby with the scarlet string on his wrist was born, and he was named Zerah.
Wow, yeah, that was a lot. Thanks for reading that, Raquel. Yeah, there's a lot there, so I might just summarize it real quick. So pretty much we have Judah, Joseph's brother from earlier in the story, and he goes off on this little side quest sort of thing. He finds a wife. He has 3 sons. He goes ahead, finds a wife for his first son, but his first son is so wicked that God strikes him down. And then his second son is meant to have children with the wife of his first son, Tamar, but he chooses to spill his semen on the ground, and God doesn't like this and strikes him down again. And then Judah, fearing for his third son would also die, decides to send Tamar away under the excuse that he'll wait until Sheila is a bit older. But when Sheila gets older, he doesn't actually give her to Tamar. Tamar, seeing this, she's a bit annoyed, and she's still a widow and wants children. So she devises this plan where when Judah goes to shear his sheep, she's going to wait outside looking like a prostitute. And seems to work. Judah asks to sleep with her, and then pretty much gives like the equivalent of his passport, his signet ring to her as a promise that he'll pay her with a goat. Then when he sends the goat, nobody can find her because there's no prostitute in that town. And then they find out that Tamar's pregnant, and he's like, kill her. But then she's like, oh, it's you who made me pregnant. And he's like, oh, my bad. And he's like, yeah, you're more righteous than me. And then we get a bit of information about the children that she has. The first crazy thing that not crazy, but like sort of weird thing is this, the brother giving his dead brother's wife's some sons or children. What's up with that? Can you give us some context?
So it was this practice called a levirate marriage, and basically if a woman married a guy and he died before he could give her any sons, his brother, so say it was the oldest brother, the next in line would then marry that woman, and basically would give her sons, so that she could have an heir and so that his brother's line could continue. So that child, even though it was the second brother's son, would be sort of known and understood and have the name of the first brother. And then that woman would also be looked after. So it sounds really weird, like you're basically marrying your brother-in-law. But it's this practice that, back in these days where people did die quite often. And for a woman, there was no other way to sort of support herself. It's a way for her to be looked after. And so by refusing to give his brother's wife an heir or a child, Onan it's basically this really selfish act that he does. And so, he shows a lack of responsibility and care for Tamar. But he's also not living up to what he should be doing.
Yeah. So it seems like a weird thing to us, but it's a very cultural, normal thing, and sort of like honorable, admirable thing to do. Like you're looking after your family in that way and continuing your bloodline. And so, that brings us into God striking these people down. And we see this a lot. But it seems like it shouldn't be confused with the reason for him striking down, specifically with Onan, is it? Yeah. Is that it's not because he spilled his semen or seed on the ground, but more that his intention behind that was very selfish.
Yeah.
And yeah, God really values uplifting the vulnerable, as we just saw in our last series, the Justice series. And yeah, he's just doesn't like it when we choose ourselves over
Yeah.
others.
And we talk about the first son who Tamar is originally married to. We're not really told why he's struck down, just that he's wicked enough for God to sort of bring judgment on him. But it starts because Judah marries a Canaanite woman, and Abraham, I think God, through Abraham, told his children, do not marry the Canaanites. They are wicked people. They are evil people. And we sort of see every time the Israelites in general go off track, they start worshipping idols and whatever, it's because of this intermarriage between these other cultures who are evil and who have all these idol worship, idol practice, child sacrifice, that sort of stuff. And so Judah has married a Canaanite woman, and then he's also found a Canaanite wife for his sons. And this sort of, you see how it leads them in this journey of sort of wickedness and selfishness.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and let's just talk about. So he first makes this one sort of, I guess, is a smaller mistake, but still like a mistake nonetheless, in going away from the recommendations of his great grandfather, pretty much. But then he just like continues to make these mistakes in his relationships. And just continues to muddle up these relationships by, I guess, in the same way his son Onan was somewhat selfish. Judah is also selfish, and he wants to keep his son in sending Tamar away, and that creates a lot of problems later on as well. I want to talk about like the placement of this. This pretty strange spot for it to be.
Yeah, what did you think about that? Because for context, Judah is one of Joseph's brothers.
Yeah.
And so this kind of, in Genesis and beforehand, you see like Joseph is sold into slavery. Did you have any thoughts about that and how this story sort of ties in with everything?
Yeah, a bit. At first I was like, this is super weird, because you start off Joseph's story, then it goes to Judah, and then we just go back to Joseph's story and continue that through. And it's like very out of the blue, not consistent with anything. But then you look at the story that follows this one, the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife. And then this is another story where we're talking about relationships, and there's like good and bad decisions that could be made. So we have a look at Judah's relationship in this story and how he messes things up. And then we get this giant contrast with Joseph's story, and how he chooses sort of the right way, or the better way to navigate these relationships with others. So it at first it seems very strange, but then when you like start looking at a story as a whole, it's like, oh, there's a much bigger point here.
Yeah, it all connects. I have also always found this placement really weird, because I'm like, yep, Joseph, randomly Judah, who I was like, who even is this guy?
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, because when you look, and I know that we're going through Genesis at the moment, when you look at Genesis as a whole and as a bigger picture, especially the story of like Jacob's sons, you look at Joseph, and Judah is the one that basically says, like, let's sell him into slavery. And that's Judah's idea. And then you have towards the end of Genesis, Judah actually offers himself as sort of a slave in place of one of his brothers.
Yeah,
and
full 360.
Yeah, and in the middle of these two stories is this story that we're talking about, where Judah sort of does this thing and like messes up all these times, but then eventually comes around and does the right thing. Like, he is sort of humiliated by Tamar and what she has pointed out in him. And then from that, like he changes, and towards the end, he offers himself in place of his brother.
Yeah, so there's like clear learning there, and he's clearly accepting what he's done, acknowledging it, also repenting of it, and progressing in that way. We also see later on, forget which chapter it is, but later Jacob is blessing his sons. It's the end of Jacob's life. And a lot of the sons that he's like blessing and prophesying over, the things that he's saying aren't all that positive. Some are just like weird, like you go own ships or you go break bread or something like that. But then others he's just outright cursing, specifically looking at like Reuben, which is the firstborn, which usually you bless the firstborn. That's like the leader of your lineage. But what Reuben does is he sleeps with his father's wife, his like stepmother. But I don't think he ever really acknowledges that or repents of that. Judah also has this massive screw up, but he, unlike Reuben, repents and acknowledges it. And then you can see that when Judah is given this massive blessing and this prophecy of being the like heir of kingdoms and really the main force behind Israel.
Yeah, because Judah is sort of prophesied to rule, and he basically, his three older brothers who should have received all these blessings are basically denied. And, I think as Jacob says, because of everything you've done, nothing will happen of you. But then Judah, who at that point, he's changed and something has changed within him. And it's actually from Judah's line that Jesus is born.
Wow.
Which I find really interesting. I think it's through Perez. In both Matthew and Luke, they list Perez as an ancestor of Jesus.
Which is why that little bit about why they're born, like who's born at the end is there.
Yeah, exactly. But what do you think of sort of I guess there are some very interesting morals in this story. But what do you think it kind of shows about Judah? Like his, two of his sons die, and so he wants to keep his third son, but in doing so, he's robbing Tamar of having support. She goes back to her father's house when because she's married now, she's not her father's responsibility anymore. She's under Judah's responsibility. And so, I guess, what do you find interesting about like where he sort of started from compared to where he ended up at the end?
Yeah, again, it was that sort of like selfishness or not really caring for others or the vulnerable, and that sort of led him to that spot. But with Judah, his development through it, I think the main thing that we can draw out from it is Judah like messes up. He creates this wrong relationship.
Yeah.
But in the end, he resolves it in the right way. So he tells the truth, and he acknowledges the wrong. Whereas Tamar was like sort of screwed over here. Don't want to like demonize her or anything, but the way that she goes about trying to resolve the issue that she's in is in the wrong way. So through like deceiving or revenge, these sorts of things. That's how she tries to resolve the wrong that's been done to her. And then I just see the contrast between how they resolve it. And then drawing again in Joseph sort of avoids the whole scenario that we see these two in by choosing the right option in the first place.
Yeah. And I think it goes to show like God, even though Tamar went about it potentially in the wrong way, God still used that, and he used it to bring about something good. And I think when we look at Judah, like, God redeemed Judah's life. And I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways from this story is that, like, there is hope for sinners.
Yeah.
Even though, like, we mess up and we do the wrong thing, like, God can find a way to work that for his good, and he can, you know, he's constantly, like, working in us. And I think as long as we're open to that, he can really transform our lives.
Yeah.
What would you say is a takeaway for you?
No, I really love that. First of all, I really agree with that. So amazing that, yeah, even though she was sinful, and he was sinful and everything's messed up, they still get this great honor of being in Jesus' lineage. What I find as a takeaway is sort of in our relationships when they go astray, and our friendships and everything like that, acknowledging, like, the wrong we do to each other and being truthful always. And I see that how we overcome these struggles that we have with each other in our relationships by always telling the truth. And
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for talking about this. It's definitely an interesting chapter.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of things we can take away from it. And yeah, if you guys keep on listening in the coming weeks, you'll hear more about Genesis and more about these sort of stories. So
Great.
yeah, thanks for listening.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Avenue podcast in our series on relationships. We believe conversations around scriptures help us in the way we relate with God and those around us. My name is Raquel, and if you want to learn more about our community, you can get in touch with us through the handle @Avenue Mission on social media platforms.